Welcome back. And we're continuing on today with the lower joint of this clarinet. My name is Stephen, your host. And today's episode is we're going to put the keys back on the lower joint now. And we're going to have a few tips and techniques along the way. Don't forget to give a thumbs up, subscribe, like, and share afterwards. So let's start putting the keys back on this lower joint of this Buffet S1. All right, we're back now with our clarinet lower joint body. Now the first two keys I want to install is our side F sharp key and our long C key. Two reasons for this. One, we want to get the F sharp key out of the way because of the spring. We don't want to poke ourselves. And as you can see here, the C spring sticks out too. Now the C definitely has to go on first no matter what, because it is one of the lowest keys that gets covered up with our side C sharp and B key. And this I just want to get out of the way because we can install it any time, but I just want the spring covered up. So starting with the C key, see, I already poked myself. That's what you have to be careful with all the time. In this case, pulling my multiple spring tools with me. This is a little bit hard because I'm working behind a camera, stretching my arms over it. As I slowly get this in there, the second one. Now we want to make sure there's motion in it. Sometimes you can make screw heads too tight, and since they're pivot screws and they're pointed, it can make the keywork too tight and you have to loosen it a bit. You have to be careful about that. You also don't want to make it too loose so it will fall out, in which case you want to use a little bit of a Loctite. Got that one out of the way. Now we go to the side F sharp key. This one I should be able to slide over onto the spring. I don't poke myself. I'm going to use the hook and pull the spring back. Put the key into place. Then let go of the spring. And now I have it in there. And then the rod. So we have to move this and get that into place. Oops. Moving it back and forth, helping get in there. Another shorter screwdriver. Action looks good. By the way, all I did with this clarinet is I took off the keywork and we're putting it back on. I haven't replaced any pads or anything. I just did it as an example. Next, we got to go to the low part. This is the C sharp key. We remember correctly, this has a spring hooked up to this cylinder here, and it goes into the cylinder, goes in this deep cutout here. The spring goes in this slot here. Then there's a little slot up here where the spring goes underneath this bolt, this washer here. Now I left this screw in there before, just sometimes makes it easier. But this is where we have to position everything together. Let's get this in there. Be careful of the springs, not to poke yourself. As you can see here, this F-sharp key does interfere in my access to that, but that's just something I just kind of deal with. Just because I've been hit too many times with that spring over there, I just want to get it out of the way. Making sure as I put that in there that I don't have the knurling hit the chimneys. You don't want to damage the chimneys. We're getting there now. Now I'm going to put in the ring keys. The ring keys will block off access to this one pivot screw, but this will still be open. Of course, you do have to push this down. And we'll put the pop in the spring in the end. As you can see, there's no one clear way of putting it all back together. Depends what you're comfortable with. I've just poked myself with this F-sharp spring way too many times in the past, so I just like to cover it up. Movement is a little bit too stiff. I'm going to back off this screw a bit. We remember there was wear in the rods themselves, the key rods themselves. That's a lot better action. Now I have to put the spring onto the spring hook in there, the cradle. Down, up, and there we go. Good motion right there. Starting to get there. Now with the long B key, which is fairly easy, just kind of slides on the top. Rolling it backwards a little bit to feel where it kind of clicks. And then you have to make sure that the keywork itself is lined up with it. So go in. Good movement. Push the spring onto the cradle, pushing it down and pulling it back up. There we go. Now the two hardest keys to deal with, these ones. As we see here, the springs are kind of bent down to create the tension that's needed. With a crow's foot, goes underneath these keys, pops up here and gets on top of the side C key. And then the E flat key. We have the long screw rod that goes in there. Now this rod doesn't provide any side tension like the pivot screws do. So there's no real wear on any side of the keys except wear from being up and down. That usually is quite minimal over time. Now we have to get those springs into play. That's where we use the hook. Try to get into a slot here. There we go. Just got that one in. Well, it's on, but my spring screw's in the way. Spring hook's in the way. Oh. Have to come on the bottom of this one. Pain. There we go, I got it on. Hope I recorded that. Now we're down to the last two keys. We can do them both at the same time. Now remember, these are not stepped. I showed this clarinet before where these are stepped. You can see these are not connected. There's a step right here, kind of lifter there. These have pins that go into holes right here, so the keys move with motion. Now during refurb, what we'll be doing with pins is usually probably doing some Teflon inserts. This clarinet's perfectly fine the way it is though. Bingo, everything's back together. Nothing's binding. And that's the basics of putting keys back on a clarinet. And there we go. We put the keys back on the clarinet. Nothing's binding. Of course, if you have some key oil, you may want to put it into the pivot areas and then wipe off any excess. But that's what we just did. We put the keys back on the lower joint of our clarinet. I want to thank you for listening today. Any questions or comments, please post them down below. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up, like, share, and subscribe. God love the knowledge, God love life, God love clarinets. We'll see you next time.